Well, Sydney siders and the country has witnessed two horrific attacks over the last few days. The Bondi Junction stabbing spree, which resulted in 6 people losing their lives, and an act of terror where a 16-year-old stabbed a bishop in a Western Sydney church.
It's just so much, isn't it? For many, the unthinkable violence has left people overcome with emotion. So how do you process such heavy news and recover from traumatic events?
For more, we welcome back psychiatrist Dr Tanveer Ahmed. Hello, doctor. We live in a world where we're accessing and consuming information. It's never been easier. How does this negative news, received so quickly, affect our brain?
It's too much, isn't it, God? I think we all collectively need to put the kettle on. That's the sort of situation we live in. And you're right, we're built for survival. We're not actually built for contentment, happiness. We have to fight for that. So our brains now go into catastrophe mode. We're assessing risk. We're probably going to overestimate risk everywhere. So we do actually need to take measures. I mean, some simple things are you probably need to block yourself from the news a little. You know, be a bit stricter about it, because the news is not your life. You know, focus on the things in your life that you can control, all the things that you can have gratitude for. Likewise, focus on facts and not opinion. I think sometimes opinions can really blow up your mind, and social media is full of that. Yeah. And that's one of the big challenges there as well.
Probably important to point out too that we are just talking about bystanders, not those who are the families who are absolutely impacted. So we're just talking about the community as a whole,
of course,
who are on the sidelines watching in on this.
That's right, yeah. We're not talking people super close to it. We're not talking about witnesses and family. But I mean, the other thing, I already see it in friends and family. You almost need, and this is a difficult concept, you almost need to limit empathy. Right? The people who often struggle the most, it's normal to feel for people, you acknowledge it, but if you get too enveloped, too obsessed, you actually just get emotionally exhausted. And this actually happens with doctors. There's studies where the doctors who are almost too involved with their patients, they take it home, they actually can't take care of them as well. So there's an element of that in what's going on out there right now.
That's a very big ask, because if you're involved, if you're close to someone who's affected by this, you want to give them your all, right?
Absolutely.
So it's difficult to say measure that out. When bad news breaks, it can be very hard to escape. It's on the TV, it's on your phone, it's everywhere. You suggest maybe switching off for a little while, but that's hard too, because you do want to know what's going on.
Look, you've got, I think, a little bit, again, focus on facts, take it in chunks, you know, maybe set off notifications and kind of block some of that. But really, you've got to go out into your real world. Do some simple rituals, you know, it could be mindfulness activities, exercise. And look, any time national tragedy and national triumph actually brings us together. So it could actually, it's a time of real collective strength. So it might actually be the time where you have all these people on your periphery that you wouldn't normally talk to. It could be your barista, the person at checkout, the person at your yoga class. It's actually time to potentially reach out to these groups and, you know, feel more connected, and that'll actually help us get through.
Right. These attacks took place at typically safe locations. We're talking about a shopping centre, we're talking about a church. So how does that now affect how people then go back to church, or maybe going to a shopping centre for the first time since Saturday? At some point, we all have to go back to the supermarket or back to a shopping centre. Look, so what's your advice there?
Look, I think it's quite normal in this early phase. We all have what's called recency bias. The reality is Australia remains one of the most prosperous and peaceful countries in the world, and that hasn't changed. But we're all going to have recency bias because it's just happened, so our sense of risk is going to change for a week or two. I think that's okay. Now, it may be in the first week or two when you start doing these rituals that you do it slightly differently. You might go with someone else. You might do it for a shorter period. You might do it in a slightly different way before you re-engage in a couple of weeks. But the reality is, you know, we had Bali, we had World Trade Center. We all went back to flying. Most of us gone back to Bali. So that will happen. We're all going to still go shopping. But I think it's perfectly reasonable that in the first week or two that we reflect, that we have a bit more fear, and we connect with others. We don't necessarily try and process it just on our own.
And I like what you say, maybe grab a friend and go shopping. Yeah.
So everyone's feeling collectively sad at the moment, but what if there's something more serious? What if this has triggered something quite serious for you in the mental health sphere? When do we know? What are the red flags?
Well, Larry, this is close to home, because the people most vulnerable here are usually people who already have some sort of pre-existing mental health issues. So I think there are groups that are more likely to get, say, disruptions in their sleep, appetite. They might get more panicky when they think about this and really take it on. They might start using substances more, that sort of stuff. So I think some of these key things when they happen, when you really, your relationships, your work, you're starting to avoid things that you would normally do. I think that, and if that's prolonged, it's only been a few days now, so I think it's fine that we're all in a bit of collective shock for this week.
Yes.
But if this is going on in the future, in the coming weeks, then I think it's worth getting professional help, whether it's helplines, GP, psychologists, and even priests. For some people, it'd be their priest or their, imam, etc. Because this isn't just about mental health; it's also about processing, existential suffering. So it's also about bigger questions, and we don't often talk about that in a not terribly religious society. So I think it's also important that we think about it in that way.
And typically, would you and your colleagues expect to see a bit of a tidal wave, a rush after something like this?
I wouldn't, no, not necessarily. I think for most people it'll be fairly mild and self-limiting. Some of our patients that already have a serious history, say maybe a trauma type history, for them it might be a little bit triggering, but for the vast majority of people, we would expect it to be self-limiting. By and large, people are resilient, and we've got lots of resources. This is a great country. We've got so many institutions and resources, and it's time to use them.
So, in conclusion, what would your advice then be to our viewers who are watching this morning who are feeling sad and who feel overwhelmed with sadness about what's happened? So, in closing, your advice would be?
It's right to feel that way. Let's put a collective cup of tea on. You've got great people around you. Embrace them. Feel for the victims, but life will go on.
Okay.
I like the idea of a collective cup of tea. All right, thanks for your time this morning.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Doctor. If you or someone you know does need support, you can reach out to Lifeline. 13 11 14 is the number, and they are available 24 hours a day.
And please don't hesitate to reach out.